All right, welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Eric Peterson, but I go by Planet Peterson on TikTok and YouTube. I'm a science teacher, but I'm most well known for doing debates and discussions on TikTok with people who have alternate ideas about the shape of the earth, evolution, the existence of God, free will, and a lot of other random things. This is our inaugural episode, and I'm pleased to be joined by two of my fellow TikTok creators, scientist Simon and Globe Man. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell you what they're all about.
My name is Simon. I do in the private sector microbiology research after graduating with my Bachelor's of Science in Physiology in 2015. I mainly work with bacteria, yeasts, and molds and their detection in different foods and pharmaceuticals.
All right, I'm Tyler. I go by Globe Man on TikTok, and I normally just argue with flat earthers. I don't know. I'm a little bit of everything, I guess. I don't have any degrees in anything, but I like jumping in and just talking about different subjects. I've learned a lot from a lot of people, so I like to spread that knowledge.
Very good. So the way this will work is we have a number of questions that our viewers have submitted on TikTok, and we'll be answering those. If you have questions you want us to address in future episodes, check out each of our accounts where we will post videos where you can submit those questions, and we'll share that information. It'll be in the description for this video, and we'll have each of us plug our platforms towards the end here. So let's just jump right into it. So the first question I got, this is from Astro Gerbil, and Astro Gerbil wants to know, he asked about the apple in a box. So if an apple, it goes like this. If an apple is placed inside of a perfectly sealed box and time progressed to infinity, eventually the state that the apple was in when it was placed in the box will happen again. All of the atoms and particles will reassume that form. So just hearing that, what do you guys think about that?
I don't know. It reminds me a lot of there was this show on Netflix called Genius, actually, where they were talking about like Albert Einstein and kind of going through that. And it sounds similar to that because there was something in the show where he had like a box of pencils. And then what he did was he threw them out of the pencil box and they all fell on the ground. He was like, well, if we were to do that enough times, maybe there would be a chance that it goes back to the state it was in, right? Just the exact same form. And I don't know. It sounds similar to that, as far-fetched as it might be. Possible, maybe. I'm not sure.
It reminds me of what's called like Infinite Monkey Cage, which is Brian Cox. I don't know if this is like a TV show or a TV episode or a special he did, but it's just the idea that if you have an infinite number of monkeys typing for an infinite amount of time, eventually they will write the works of Shakespeare because they have to, because it's an infinite amount of time.
Infinite time, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, like an infinite amount of time doesn't mean that all things will happen. It means all things that can happen will happen, you know? So this apple in the box thing, I'm not sure if this qualifies as something that can happen, but I mean, I don't know. I went on some like physics forum and I just looked at what a couple of people were saying. So I don't know how to dissect this any farther. So if there are any experts listening to this, you could respond to it, get in touch with one of us. But one of the responses was, this is like Quora for physicists, They said, as far as I can tell, the Apple claim refers to, it's called the ergodic hypothesis, which implies that each microstate of a system will be assumed over time. So in the Apple example, the macro state is the box containing a given collection of atoms with a given energy. So the Apple being whole is one microstate, and so therefore it would need to be assumed again by that hypothesis. But there were the same person goes on to criticize it and says that the ergodic hypothesis, it's not, well, he said it's not even a real hypothesis, but it certainly doesn't mean it's true. It's just an idea, right? And he says he doesn't think it's compatible with like a Newtonian system. So for me, like, and this is just what I think, but there are so like there are different kinds of infinities, right? There are some infinities that are bigger than others. So I wonder if the Apple doing this is just like what can happen isn't part of the infinity of what leads to the apple resuming its form. So the apple will rot and the molecules will rest on the quote unquote bottom of the box. I'm not sure if we're supposed to ignore gravity in this situation, but that's where they have the least amount of energy. So the idea that the atoms and molecules could spontaneously arrange into a higher energy state just to me doesn't seem reasonable, I guess, or supportable. So there are an infinite number of ways those atoms and molecules can settle on the bottom of the box. And perhaps an even larger infinity number of ways which they can assume all over the box. So I'm not sure. I do know that Sean Carroll actually, he co-authored a paper where they calculated how long it would take for a piano to do that exact same thing, to just spontaneously reform. I can't remember what the number is, but that paper actually is online. I was reading some of it earlier at work today, but I got kind of my eyes glazed over after going over enough of it. So I don't know how long it would actually take, but I assume it's a very
and it sounds like more of a like what is the possibility rather than probability almost, because I mean, is it probable for that to happen? Almost not at all, right? Like it doesn't make sense that an apple would rot and then reform back in a normal apple form. But given enough time, is it possible? I mean, maybe. That's a tough one to answer, because kind of like you just said, it'll fall to the, like you said, bottom of this box. Well, there would have to be some kind of force to be able to push it back into an apple form.
Right, yeah. And it makes me wonder what sort of theoretical parameters we have around this box, right? Is it ignoring gravity, like you made that point? Is it perfectly insulated, right? Is there any energetic loss to
that is part of it? It
outside of the box.
Yeah, that is part of it. I guess I should have mentioned it can't interact with the outside, with anything outside of the box. And I know in Carroll's case they ignore gravity. So
then we would assume that anything that could happen in that box would be in equilibrium, right? Like there is no energy loss. So whatever energy is given off by the rotting of the apple is still within that box, and could, I guess, theoretically be used to move back and forth between different states, given enough time. What is it like? Time doesn't pass for a system at equilibrium, because everything, a perfectly balanced reaction at equilibrium is transitioning both forward and backwards. And so it's interesting, outside my wheelhouse, but
yeah,
fun to think about.
Yeah, it is kind of fun to think about. I know. So this is one of those things where, I mean, the amount of time that it would take would probably be longer than the molecule. I mean, like, because even ordinary matter spontaneously decays into, like, things that aren't even considered to be radioactive eventually do break down. Like protons and neutrons just degrade into pure energy. At least I think that's what happens. So I feel like the amount of time for the apple to be assembled would probably, we'd get to that first, but they're probably assuming like, well, it's not, we have to ignore that happens too, right? So I mean, it is what it is. That's probably about as far as we can take that question, I would think.
Yeah,
entertainingly inflammable amounts of time.
I'm definitely no blitz, so I can't answer that in like a good way for sure.
Yeah. This comes from, there is a Netflix show about this. I can't remember what it's called, but there was I got tagged in a video that talked about it. So
maybe
next
that's
question,
where Gerbil got his question from. My question is are we talking like Red Delicious, or like, like the green sour kind? I think that's a factor in this.
The real question is, what kind of apple would you want to come back from being rotted?
I don't know.
I can't imagine wanting to eat any of them.
Well, you could get any kind.
You gotta make sure it's the one you like, though. Can't just be a random one.
And perfectly time your picking of this apple out of the box.
Right.
All right. Our next question came from Michael Montica 463. I hope I'm saying that right. And this question is talking to people who say they won't change their minds discouraging? And if not, what fuels you to keep going? So who wants to do that first?
I mean, I guess I can real quick. So I don't know. The biggest thing is whenever I have discussions with these people, the goal isn't to change anyone's mind. Because I mean, we've all heard it 1,000 times, right? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. They're kind of the same thing, right? You can give somebody the knowledge to be able to understand something, but if they don't want to understand it, it's kind of useless, right? So that's the thing. It's more so just right. I'm here to present the knowledge that I've come across, right? The things that I know, and so people can look into it further, right? I don't want anyone to take me just at face value. I want people to fact check me, and I don't know. I think I've gotten to a point now where I realize that if you go into it trying to change someone's mind, you're just going to get frustrated and just want to argue with them, you know?
Yeah, I share a lot of that same view. So most of my discussions center around the topic of biological evolution, and I think the only people that don't or that would hold a position contrary to evolution is factual and it happens are come from a very strongly motivated stance on the issue, and you can't get those people to change their minds. And so much like you had said, the goal isn't to do that. I think my goal in those discussions is to also just present the facts so that anyone listening to our discussion who might be swayed can hear that there are these these counter arguments to evolution is trash and whatever. Things that I didn't hear in high school when I was very much leaning young Earth creation. No one was actually teaching me about these biological concepts, and we certainly weren't getting it in school. So now I like to think of myself as just like one of the voices, right, in the marketplace of ideas that I kind of wish existed when I was trying to form my own opinions on these things.
Wish there was like a voice of reason almost.
Yeah.
Voice of reason is not. We know who that is. He's not a voice of reason all the time. Not all the time. I agree with him on several things, but
a little bit is kind of out there.
They did not teach evolution at your high school, or it just didn't get covered with any meaningful depth.
So it didn't. So the underpinning, so like you can briefly touch on it without actually making it sound like a credible thought, right? Like that the mainstream consensus is kind of like this happened. But when you're being taught that from a deeply religious biology teacher, they kind of hand wave and don't actually give its due. And like there was at least a notice that went home that would say, hey, we're going to cover this topic in the coming days. And some kids didn't show up because their parents just felt that strongly about it. So that's
pretty sad. For me, have any of you ever gone on Omegle before?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There used to be there used to be some TikTok accounts that they would upload instead of, I think maybe this is before TikTok had a live feature, but people would, no, it was when it had a live feature, but people would live stream their Omegle debates. So during the pandemic, I got so bored that I went on Omegle a few times. And I talked to people from all over the world. It was really fascinating, but occasionally you would run into some like really horrible figures who have like, a flag from 1930s Germany, let's just say, in the background. And I talked to several of those people, and that is extremely discouraging, because they won't. But the reason it is because I was talking to this one person, and then they could just hit next whenever you make a good point, and you just leave so frustrated. But TikTok is completely different, because the way I view TikTok, it's like, for example, I was a guest on somebody's live stream a couple days ago, and for 45 minutes, we just yelled at each other. And we made arguments. He thought he was right. I'm pretty sure I was right, But the point is, several thousand people saw that, and it doesn't matter that much that I don't think he changed his mind and he doesn't think I changed my mind. For me, it's the marketplace of ideas, and there are other people consuming it. So whoever's right or whoever's wrong, I trust the collective intelligence of the audience or whatever to be able to ascertain that, which is why debate and dialogue has to happen to get those ideas out there. So I have no idea, but I feel like I've probably changed some minds of people who are on the fence that were listening, or I'm sure that people that just didn't even know hardly anything about the topic and listened to me debate somebody learned something new from me and perhaps from them as well. And there's real value in that. You don't necessarily see it, maybe you can't measure it. Whereas if the other person just went, fine, I admit it, you were right, then that would be immediately gratifying. But I don't go looking for that because I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think it's super important really either.
Well, you have to remember, there is that one guy who told his boss the earth was flat.
I have no idea if that guy is real or not, but
well, I don't know either. Those were some pretty funny lives, though. I know that much.
They were great. That is one of the classics. All right, this one came from Wild Heretic. So the question is, how does the heliocentric model explain double suns or mega cryometeors? And we'll probably have to start by addressing what on earth is a double sun and a mega cryometeor.
All right. The mega cryometeor, I meant to look into it, but I forgot to. But the double sun thing, that's just, I'm sure people have seen videos of it before, but someone's taking a video of, let's say, a sunset or a sunrise or something, and you see two suns, right? This is a phenomenon that only happens through a lens. It doesn't happen, like, you don't actually see it with your eyes. So that's really the most there is to say about it. I don't know why the heliocentric model was brought up for that when it's a camera thing, but and then mega cryometeors, I don't know, maybe Science with Simon or you have looked into it. I didn't get much of a chance to.
I Googled the term once because somebody brought it up, and it's basically just extremely large blobs of ice that people find on the ground. They don't really look like hailstones. And I don't think we have a good meteorological explanation for what they are, but the person that brought them up to me told me that it was a chunk, or it comes from ice. So this person thinks that the Earth is a sphere, but we live on the inside surface of the sphere. And so if you lived on the opposite side of the planet from somebody and you both looked up, you would be looking towards the center of the planet. And in the center of the planet, there's an enormous glass sphere, and that is what the night sky and the whole universe is. And so he was telling me mega cryometeors, which is very difficult to say, are the result of ice forming because it's very cold near the sphere on the surface of the sphere and then falling off, kind of like that frozen toilet thing in Joe Dirt, if you ever seen that movie. So that
I was thinking of like Chicken Little. The sky is falling.
It's not that much.
Right, just a piece of, yeah. Say that 5 times fast. Mega cryometeor. Meteor. I can't even say it once.
Say it one time.
Say it one time slowly. That's the goal.
Mega cryometeor. Yeah. So the double sun thing, yeah, it's a lens artifact or whatever. So that's an interesting one because obviously nobody's ever seen one. It's just photos of them that have been passed around, and what is it? It's kind of ironic because like these are the people that tell us like, oh, everything you believe about space and there are no photos of Earth from space. It's just a CGI or whatever. It's like, but you're coming to us with something that exists only, which we know is just a photographic like artifact. It's like a glitch in photography, and so that counts as evidence of something apparently all of a sudden. But if they weren't hypocrites, they wouldn't believe in the things they do. So,
well, I saw it with my own 2 eyes on my camera.
That's the thing. If we're trying to reason with somebody who thinks there's 2 suns.
Yeah,
we gotta think about it for a second.
You can't logic someone out of position they didn't logic themselves into, right?
Right. Yeah, you're gonna have to find some other conspiracy. You got to make it a conspiracy, like the heliocentric model. They've been lying to us about it. We actually go around the sun. The Earth, it was flat, but then we figured out it was a lie.
You believe in models? You got to go crazier than them. You got to throw them off.
Like, what do you think of double suns? You still think the sun exists?
There's at least 4. I don't.
There was
You're
there was
crazy,
there was an explorer. His name was Luke Skywalker, and he grew up on a planet that had 2 suns. It's been documented.
Oh, yeah, true. You know, not gonna lie, I don't know how to respond to that.
Books have been written about it.
It's true.
Lots of them. Also, some people even wrote fan fictions about him because of how awesome it was. I heard.
There have been many movies, some great, some absolutely awful. Truly, they really hit the pantheon there. All right. Since we're going in this direction, Crispin Bonilla asked, why are UFOs almost always saucer shaped? And is that even a good design? So does anybody have? And then another additional question is, why are aliens always naked? So with regards to any of those,
That's the important question. Crispin's asking the important questions here. Why
That is
are
a
they
good question.
naked?
Right.
that's a good question.
Did they
So-
have some weird kink for humans? Why do they keep coming here?
I don't know. Yeah, George Carlin. I'm not gonna say any of it, but George Carlin has an extremely funny bit about like how aliens. He's being very sarcastic. He's like, "Oh, I'm sure aliens would love to come to planet Earth," and then he lists all the absurdities of human beings. So go look it up. I don't want to steal his bit, but is a flying saucer a good design for a spacefaring vehicle that also does atmospheric reentry?
Is that structurally sound?
I mean, the biggest thing is obviously the reason a lot of them look like that is because they're balloons, right? Like a lot of sightings have turned out to just be basically weather balloons, and they've basically gotten squished, and they just take on that kind of saucer shape. But as I don't know if that would actually be a great design. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not an alien. Maybe I am, but maybe I'm not a very smart one.
I don't know either. I mean, with somebody asked me once what would be the best shape for like a transplanet vessel. I don't know, like a spacecraft. We'll just say. I don't know why I tried to be fancy, but I basically said, well, it depends on what the purpose is. Like if it's literally to ferry people, then just make it the shape of a like one of those, what do you call them, the freight liners, on the like the Ever Given that got stuck in the Suez Canal. Just make it like that, like literally as blocky and ugly, but as efficient at traveling cargo as possible. So
because there's no resistance in space, so it doesn't really matter like
True.
what the shape is.
It wouldn't matter. So the atmospheric reentry, that matters. So the space shuttle had to be designed in a very special way. But all the depictions, we've seen of UFOs, the reason the space shuttle has all those unique problems is that the space shuttle re-enters Earth's atmosphere going tens of thousands of miles per hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
But all the depictions of UFOs, how do they travel? Or what is their movement like?
No, they just kind of appear where they want to be. They don't really need to re-enter and crash into something.
Yeah.
They seem to hover.
They move in whatever direction, and the propulsion system, obviously they don't even try to design it because it doesn't have to be realistic. But they don't have the problem of they don't have the same problem of re-entry, because the UFO can just, if you could just like literally control your descent down to Earth, only going as fast as you want, then it doesn't matter. You don't get the compression of the atmosphere and the extreme heating along with it. So the flying, if whatever alien technology is, we can't even imagine it. So the flying saucer design is totally, I guess, valid. If we ask, like you asked the correct question, which is it structurally sound? But it's actually probably just kind of irrelevant, because they don't have to worry about the same kinds of things we do.
Right. If gravity is negligible, then I don't even know engineering when gravity is not negligible. So
this is funny. I looked into this. So apparently the origin of this is on June 24th, 1947, an amateur pilot was on his way to an air show in Oregon when he saw bright blue flashes of light near Mount Rainier, which is in Washington. So the pilot, his name was Kenneth Arnold, he tried to describe the motion of the objects to a reporter for the United States press, and a mix-up occurred. They basically misquoted him. He said that they flew like a saucer if you skipped it across the water. And I'm not totally sure what he meant by that, if they like had small undulations. Yeah. But the reporter thought that he meant that the objects themselves were saucer-like, and that appears to be the origin of the whole
flying
saucer thing. And what we know about this is, I guess this is kind of the Mandela effect, but people will report phenomenon and they'll describe it in details that they've been primed with before, that they've heard before. So like the most well-known example I have of this is people who have reported stigmata. So stigmata is a phenomenon where the wounds of the crucifixion spontaneously will appear on your hands. But then there were, I don't know who on earth did this research, but there was some research that came out that said, actually, if you drove a nail through your hand, that couldn't possibly support the weight of the body. And I think we have also found remains of people who had been crucified. They would instead drive it between your radius and your ulna.
The radius and the ulna.
So then all of a sudden, people, I think this was like late 1800s, early 1900s, now all of a sudden stigmata phenomena were appearing on people's wrists, right? Or people were reporting that they saw that, or that it happened to them. So it changes based on what we're sort of preloaded with thinking in the first place. And I think the flying saucer thing, yeah, it's probably a huge part of it.
But what about the naked part, though?
Oh yeah,
like,
I forgot about that.
Why? What about alien physiology would permit them to be like all-terrain creatures?
I don't know why they're so often depicted as being naked. I mean, they don't have, so they're not humans, but they're depicted as being humanoid, right? But they can't tell which ones are male or female. They don't have junk, so to speak, or anything like that. I don't know why this is. I would assume it's just an attempt to enter the uncanny valley, perhaps, or something like that, to make it an effective piece of filmography. The whole concept of the grays, like they're gray and they have giant heads and big eyes, that has been reported by people who have claimed they've been abducted. I don't know the origin of that specific description, because an alien shouldn't, I mean, we can imagine that they would look totally like literally the sky is the limit with what they would look like. But we're just so lazy that we're so lazy and we're so self-important that we imagine that they would look like us.
Right. Yeah, that is kind of weird. I mean, I guess it comes down to we have nothing else really to go off of, right? Like as far as we know, the most, as we would define it, intelligent things on this planet are us. But that, again, yeah, that's just measuring using the human scale. Like we don't actually know what the possibilities are. For all that we know, we're the dumbest things in the universe.
We could be up there. Yeah, there's a really good episode of Futurama where they Leonardo DiCaprio, because Fry keeps calling him that, but Leonardo da Vinci, it's revealed he was actually an alien that came to Earth from a planet of genius aliens, and he's the dumbest one on that planet. So he came to Earth because he was so sick of being bullied. Oh, that's such a good episode. I need to watch that in the near future.
That's what Venom tells his host in one of the Venom movies. Like, I want to stay here because on my planet I'm kind of a loser, like you. And it's like, aw.
That's funny. I haven't seen. I think I saw one of the Venom movies. A movie that takes extreme creative license with aliens is Arrival, I think it's called. Came out not that long ago, so check that one out if you want to see a free range depiction of what aliens can be like. They resemble octopuses, just to give it away a little bit, but it's very interesting. All right. Next question is Ferdialero. I don't know how to say this. I'm so sorry. Ferdialero asks, how come pilots flying over the Atlantic use HF radio and not VHF radio? And I don't even know what those two things stand for, so I'm just going to shut up.
Oh, I just recently had a conversation with Matt about this. So if I remember right, I believe the reason they do that is because they're able to get longer, like they're basically able to get their signals further away, um, by using something similar to like what a ham radio operator would use, which is bouncing the signal off of the ionosphere. And basically it's able to travel further than you would be able to with another frequency. If I remember correctly, I could be off on that. Someone may be able to correct me if they see this. But if I remember right, that's why, because obviously the only other option when you're in the middle of the ocean would be satellite communications, which they also do use.
So my little Google search says that HF radio bounces the radio waves off of the ionosphere.
Okay,
So
I was right on that.
whereas VHF, it basically just goes in a straight line.
Okay, so I was right. I actually remembered that. I'm surprised.
Overall, very.
Have you ever flown over the Atlantic?
No, I haven't. I've actually never left America.
My brother and my sister have, but I have not. I flew over them, their mountains over there, but
I threw a football over them one time.
Charlie 9382830219.
Wow.
I hope I got all those numbers right. Is asking us, how high would you have to be to see a little bit of curvature? So I have an answer for this, but I'll let somebody else go first.
So, I mean, if you just Google it, they'll tell you that you can start seeing left to right curvature, meaning, you know, like where it's bowing, basically. It'll be slight, but it's there at about 35,000 feet. But there are also other ways to see the curvature, for example, on the z-axis going away from you. You can use something called horizon dip angles, and you can see as you go up higher, the angle between that line and the horizon increases. That's because on the z-axis, it's going away from you. Same thing with watching boats go over the curve, but a lot of flat earthers don't like that answer. So the dip angles is a bit more of a nail in the coffin, and you can do that from like on the top of an apartment building if you want.
Yeah, I've talked to people who flew on Concorde when Concorde was still in operation, and they told me that they could see curvature when they were up on that. This will get used by flat earthers, I'm sure, but because they like to be like, Neil deGrasse Tyson even said. So he was on the Joe Rogan podcast maybe like a month ago or more, and he said that even when I think it was Felix Baumgartner, the Red Bull guy that did the stratosphere jump or whatever, he said that from that height you can't see curvature, and he says it's a fisheye lens, but that's far higher than, I don't remember how, I thought it was like 170,000 feet or something like that, but he claimed that even from there, oh, certainly higher than Concorde, yeah, but he claimed that even from there you wouldn't really be able to see curvature. So that's sort of conflicting, but my simple answer was going to be what you were talking about with, you know, like the curvature in front of you is very apparent. I live in California, and I remember the first time I went to the ocean, because I had never seen it in person before. So you have a horizon that is uncorrupted by topology, right? Which is a very fancy way of saying it's level. I mean, there are waves, but they're sort of meaningless at those distances. And it's shocking how sharp the horizon is. If the Earth were a flat plane going out from you, then the water would not just sharply demarcate at the horizon. It would blur into, it would just gradually fade, and you couldn't see the end of it at all. Like that would be completely impossible, which should immediately be apparent. But instead you see this, it's a flat thing, but it's extremely sharp. So I think going to the ocean would convince a lot of flat earthers that they're believing in nonsense.
Or even one of the Great Lakes as well.
Yeah, I went to Lake Michigan once before I moved to California, but it was foggy. I was on the Wisconsin side.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's really easy to measure that kind of stuff too. Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out.
Yeah. The town so Wisconsin is Wisconsin, it's got all the all the funny named towns are in Wisconsin. So the town I was in was called Sheboygan. That was the actual name of the town.
I think I had a teacher from there in like fourth grade. Actually, he was a huge Green Bay Packers fan and everything, and I'm pretty sure that's where he was from because that sounds so familiar.
It's I don't think there are very many of those or any towns that sound similar to it. So you're probably right.
Can't
Do you
imagine.
want to talk about?
Else?
Do you guys want to talk about the end of the universe?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I got
Absolutely.
asked. Well, this question isn't really about the end of the universe, but what I came up with leads us in that direction. So Bob Bostwick, 9800, asked, is it possible that the Big Bang was initiated by a particle entering a lower entropy state? So this really good book by Katie Mack, she's a astrophysicist. The book is called The End of Everything. I don't know if I think it's astrophysically speaking or cosmologically speaking. The book is right there. But it's called The End of Everything by Katie Mack. It's really good. It's not very long, but it goes over 6 or 7 different scenarios in which the universe could end. So the idea of a particle entering a lower entropy state, creating the entire universe, I'm not really so sure about that, but it's maybe theoretically possible. So I am not a physicist, so I will try to say as little as possible while still conveying a message, because I don't want to make myself look like an absolute fool by misstating the facts. But in the book, Katie Mack talks about something called vacuum decay, which is one of the possible ways that the universe would end. So basically, very shortly after the universe began to exist, when inflation was going on, all of the fundamental forces and fields were unified into one thing, we're pretty sure. So electromagnetism and gravity were just one unified force, along with all of the other ones, right? So, but eventually they decoupled, or they broke symmetry, is how the author describes it. And the Higgs field apparently was part of this. So it's possible. Physicists think that there's actually apparently there's good data to support this, which the author didn't really go over because it's a book meant for the general public. Imagine we have a hill and then a valley and then another smaller hill and the true valley. So if a ball were to roll into that valley, it is stuck there, right? But it's a false bottom, and these are called, I think they're called false vacuums in the book. So it's possible, apparently, that the Higgs field could have settled into what they call a false vacuum, but at any moment, some sort of event like an extremely energetic particle could kick off so much energy that in that localized area of space, the Higgs field, in a way, could quantum tunnel to that lower energy state. And if it did that, then it would begin to rip the entire, well, it wouldn't really destroy the universe, but it would completely change the universe, because all the forces would recouple or something in a brand new way. So the universe would be, it's as if, the way I think of it is like, imagine the whole universe is just like a bunch of playing cards and they're all face down. And then one of them, or how about mousetraps? Because we've all seen videos of that. A bunch of mousetraps that are primed. One goes off and then it triggers all the other ones around it to go off. So I think the effect
Like a domino effect.
Kind of like that. So like it doesn't like make the universe not exist, but it completely recreates a universe under new conditions within itself. So it's not exactly, it would probably look like a Big Bang, I guess, perhaps. I'm not sure. We'll have to get Blitz in here to maybe talk about this sometime. But that could theoretically be triggered by a particle going at incredible speeds. So there were some people that were really concerned. Do you guys remember when CERN went online? There was all this fear that it could create a black hole. And
Yeah, people were thinking it was going to make a portal to hell or whatever.
Yeah, that still goes on. So the black hole idea, she talks about that in the book too. We probably won't get into that today, but a collision from these particles could theoretically cause that event, and so people were worried about that. But the experts at CERN were like, well, okay, here's how you don't have to worry about that. there have been these types of collisions going on countless numbers of times for billions upon billions of years, because there are what we call cosmic rays. So cosmic rays, or the solar wind, these are just high energy particles. They're usually just lone protons, or sometimes alpha nuclei, which are or alpha particles, which is the nucleus of a helium atom. But those are careening through space at close to the speed of light, at velocities much greater than and equal to the velocities that CERN can manage. Now, when they hit the atmosphere, there's a lot of drag, and so they get slowed down. But the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, right? So these particles have been slamming into the moon. I mean, there's probably a million of them per square meter every second, colliding on the surface of the moon ever since the moon began to exist 4 billion years ago, or whatever. So the fact that they basically said the fact that the moon exists is very good evidence that we don't have to worry about whatever CERN is, because if it's not happening there, it's not going to happen here. So it's nothing to worry about. So the universe probably will not end in the next 5 minutes, which is good.
Hopefully, it ends at least after you post this.
At least after. Yeah, hopefully we get at least 10 views.
And one comment. There needs to be one comment before the universe ends.
From a flat earther.
Yes.
Oh yeah, calling us all shills.
All right. So this one I want to talk about. So this question actually came from Simon. So Simon wanted to know what TikTok that any of us have made are we most proud of that turned out especially good, or you thought was the most thought-provoking.
I would have to look through mine. Someone else got to go first.
I went through mine the other day, or yesterday, and so I have a couple playlists on my channel, and the videos in the playlist that just are called General Debate, there's a few in there that I thought were the best ones. So one was actually a creator took an excerpt from just something I was saying about what is life. So how life is just a self-replicating chemical system and blah, blah, blah. I sort of broke life down to like its fundamentals, its basics. And he overlaid that with, you don't see me at all. It's just a bunch of AI art that starts at like the molecular level and then zooms out and you see unicellular life, and then like simple life, and then more complex. And it's got like piano in the background, and there's a lot of like reverb in the voice and stuff. And it's incredibly beautiful. And I thought it made me sound 10 times smarter than I really am, because the production value was good. But there's a few other debates in there. So I was talking about the Omegle thing earlier, and you will just run into the dregs of humanity on that website. And you would talk to somebody has all these horrific conspiracies or whatever, and you don't know what to say. Like you can just say you're an idiot, that's not true, but you're not like substantiating that, right? To me, it's self-apparent, but that's not good enough. So I've had a few debates that you can see in the general debates thing where, I talked to people about, one guy in particular made all these points that it may not be the most obvious thing, but they're kind of like racist tropes that had to do with evolution. So it was saying things like the implication was like people that live hunter-gatherer lifestyles aren't as sophisticated or evolved or as advanced as other people, which is, it was actually intelligent as other people, which is almost certainly the opposite case, because I asked him, if I threw you into the Amazon rainforest, how long do you think you could survive? And he was like, well, what technology do I get to bring? None whatsoever. And he took great offense to that. I was like, yeah, well, you'd be dead in about 5 minutes, but there are people that have been living there for thousands of years. And so natural selection would certainly have favored more people who are more generally intelligent to live there. You just have this sort of first world bias about what intelligence is, and you think it's knowing how to change your oil, when in reality that's not super relevant or important. So I liked the way I was able to deconstruct that. And then there have been just some other conversations with people who just kind of say, I don't know if they genuinely mean it, but they say things that come across as like really bigoted. So like they'll say to me, so you think the universe doesn't have a creator? No, I personally don't. Well, that's illogical then. And so I asked the question, well, let's take like, I don't know, like a Native American tribe that has a creation mythology, which is completely different from what you find like in Book of Genesis or whatever. So between them, me and you, who's the least logical? And his response was, you're both equally illogical. I was like, see, that's the bigotry there. This is something like really important to point out, because your problem with me was that I don't posit some sort of creator to this universe. But I gave you an explanation that includes that, but it was different than yours. And then you just say that it's illogical. So those have been sort of moments like those are where, I feel like rather than just trying to like dunk on somebody or get a funny sound clip or sound bite or whatever, those are like, because I know I can understand people saying and thinking those things because they haven't actually thought about what the implications for what they're saying are. But I think that's dangerous, and we have to like be better than that. So hopefully people heard that and were a tiny bit wiser as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just looking through my videos, I think the answer for me would be, I don't know. First of all, probably just the views that I got when I first got my telescope, like looking at the moon and Saturn. Those videos didn't do very good, but I'm proud of them either way. But for a video that did well, it would have to be probably, it was like a 2-part thing. And I was just debunking Mark Sargent. He had like 5 reasons that he thought the Earth was flat. And I just did a little series just debunking every single talking point as he made it. And I mean, that did good. It got like 1.5 million views for the first part. And then I think like 105,000 for the second part. So those are pretty cool.
You have more videos with 1 million views than me. I only have 2. I have one that's about to get there, and then 2 others that are north of 800,000, I think. But
I think let's see. I think I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 right here. 3 of them are pinned, and then another one I just posted recently. It was that awful slideshow. If you saw it.
My number 1 most viewed video is a video about how long it would take Earth to disappear if 1 billion kilograms per second were removed from it, and it ends with a "Yo Mama" joke. So that's my.
I remember watching that.
Yeah.
There was one part of it that you messed up though. You said like the number, but then it was a different number on screen.
It's I said 200,000, but it's actually 200 million. So
that messed with me when I heard it.
Just have to live with it because I cannot delete that video and repost it.
Well, come on, man. I think you could do good again with it.
So Simon, what do you think yours is?
I think, well, so I do like Tyler's response when you said like your astrophotography of the moon. There was one night where I went out and I got like a really good video of the moon, and like it completely apart from like what the engagement on that particular one was. I was really proud of that one because it like the image was really clear, and it was a really cool night. And so for the story of making that one and getting that footage, I was really happy with. But I think in terms of getting people to think, I started this series on major topics in evolution, and I noticed that in my discussions with people, we couldn't even really agree on what biological evolution was. And so I just pulled up the definition of biological evolution and went through it point by point. Individuals don't evolve, populations do. And it's a change in allele frequencies over generations. And I think when you address those specific points, often those commonly misunderstood points, it's a real opportunity to address a lot of misconceptions in how people approach their rejection of the idea. And so those, in terms of thinking, I think that was my proudest But I think the coolest story was when I went out and got pictures of the moon.
It's always something more rewarding about doing it yourself, like rather than watching somebody else look at the moon. It's always nice to go out and, like, even if it takes a little bit of work, just knowing that you're able to get a nice view. It's
Yeah,
always
and
fun.
like it's there, right? You see it all the time, but like when you like finally like pull it into focus, you're like, that's the moon. Like, I don't know. I think we could all do a little more with like just, I don't know, amazement at nature, right? That's kind of what drove me to be a scientist. And when you have that understanding of the things around you, I think it cultures more appreciation, and mobilizing that in our reactions to things like climate change and whatnot, I think is extremely important. But yeah.
I think it is sorely lacking. I live near the Sierra Nevada mountains, and we've gotten unusual amounts of rain, which means that the mountains have unusual amounts of snow in them, and the rain is carrying the air pollution out of the air. So we have unusually clear views of the mountains, and they have a huge amount of snow on them, and it is just the most beautiful thing ever. And I've been thinking, like, I just need to take, because you can see them on the school campus where I work, and I've been thinking, like, I need to just take my students outside and be like, leave your phones in here. We're gonna go outside and just look at the mountains. And if you can't do that and just like be quiet for just a little bit, or like, maybe you don't have to be quiet, but if you can't look at those and just be like, wow, then something's wrong. I hope I'm not being an old man, but I feel like that has to be meaningful. And yeah, I think it is kind of sorely lacking for probably a lot of reasons, which maybe we will talk about some other day. But I think that is pretty good for our first episode. So
First episode.
We did it. So I think to close out, everybody's gonna just do a quick little plug, let them know where you can find them, how you can look them up, and if there's anything coming up or special or cool they want to add. So for me, if you're watching this, you're already on my YouTube channel, I would guess, probably, but just search up Planet Peterson on TikTok, on Instagram, or on YouTube, and I should be pretty easy to find there. And there are links to some other resources, like in the description for YouTube videos and all that. You can check stuff out there.
I said it at the beginning. You can find me on TikTok just at Globeman, all one word, GLOBE, and then man with 2 N's. And I just debunk flat earthers and join lives and debate people pretty much. I don't got any other platforms.
Is there a Discord or anything that people that you're on that they can find you at or anything?
Yeah, I'll put the link to the Discord in my bio on TikTok. I've been meaning to do it.
And I am on TikTok as science_with Simon, one word. And yeah, we just talk about a whole range of things, mostly biological related.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and special thank you to viewers that submitted the questions. There are some that we didn't get to in this episode that we can address in the future, but just look for videos that we will post in the future where we will be announcing when we have upcoming episodes, and you'll have a chance to post more questions in the comments of those. So until next time, thank you.